Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Irving, and we are here for the rare event of a book haul here on the channel. In fact, lately book unhauls have been more prevalent than book hauls, as I have gotten rid of 20-ish probably books over the last few months, but here I am replacing those 20-ish with 5. Which I think a lot of this is pretty good, because a lot of those other books I was not going to ever touch again, and these books I plan to touch wholesomely. So where are we to begin? Let's start with, so I've got 2 novels. I've got a book on books, I've got a philosophy book, and I have a book of poetry. Where should we begin? It doesn't matter what you say, I can't hear you. We're going to start with the book on books. Harold Bloom. This is a book about books, and what I worry about with Harold Bloom, as I don't have everything by Harold Bloom. What I worry about, what I worry has begun to happen and will continue to happen to Harold Bloom, as he has left recently. He passed away last year, I believe. Last year, this year has been so long, it may have been the year before that I'm thinking of. The same thing that happened to Joseph Campbell, I worry, is going to happen to him. One of the things that has happened to Joseph Campbell is a myriad of his essays. And indeed, I think even transcripts of his lectures, I think, have even made their conversion to posthumously to essays, and have started to be arranged and rearranged and sold as new products. So I worry that eventually I'm going to collect enough Harold Bloom that I will have Harold Bloom overlapping Harold Bloom. That's what I worry is going to happen. But I don't know it yet, because I haven't read a whole lot of the Harold Bloom I have. It is a shame, but one of the things in how to read and why, and I know it's a mirror image, I don't know how to fix that. If anyone knows how to fix that on an Android, let me know. I have Googled it and come back with no results. There's essays in this of 4 Ernest Hemingway short stories. One of the things, and I know, I plan on doing a billion things with Strip Coverlet, I really do. I just have to find the time and the chutzpah to get off my ass and do them. But there are essays on, one of the things I plan to do, I interrupted myself there, is I want to do series of not just video essays, but I also want to do video essays that discuss other essays. Does that make sense? So one of the things I try to stay away from in my work here on Strip Coverlet is other people's opinions. I want to read the book anew every time I read a book, the short story anew every time I read the short story, and I try to stay away from other people's opinions. I try to just completely from scratch make a video with my thoughts in it. Otherwise, why are you coming to me? Just go to a source text, go to JSTOR. Unfortunately, people don't have access to it, but if you're a student, go to JSTOR and figure out what someone else thinks about it from that person. Don't come to me for regurgitation. But I do want to make compilations of opinions on different pieces, if that makes any sense. So, for example, I want to start doing things like, Bloom has an essay on the snows of Kilimanjaro in here. Well, that's what Harold Bloom thinks. If you go to JSTOR and you have essays on the snows of Kilimanjaro, what's going on there? What's going on with that? Was it a hyena? What's going on there with that, the image of death? What's going on there with the mountains themselves? What's going on there with the fact that we have to be air flighted out? Like, all of these different things. A compilation of other people's opinions on them. But this book has 4 essays on Ernest Hemingway short stories, including not just Hills Like White Elephants and Snows of Kilimanjaro, but God Rest You Merry Gentlemen and A Sea Change. I've never seen either of those stories mentioned anywhere else, let alone having an entire essay dedicated to them. In addition to that, 3 short story essays about Flannery O'Connor, including A Good Man Is Hard to Find, which if you have not read A Good Man Is Hard to Find, you owe it to yourself. It is an experience. When you get to poetry, There is one on William Blake's The Sick Rose, which might come back later in this haul. I'm not sure. There is some Emily Dickinson referenced. There are 3 of Shakespeare's sonnets. A Slumber Did My Spirit Seal by William Wordsworth. These are all favorites of mine. When you get to the novels part 1, there are 2 parts about novels. Emma from Jane Austen is mentioned, which would be helpful for me because I didn't get anything out of reading Emma. Plays, Hedda Gabler, which we will get to eventually on the channel. This is, of course, the play from Henrik Ibsen. We're going to be making our way through a great deal of Henrik Ibsen in the not-too-distant future. We've already made our way through For the Wild Duck is what we're doing now. We've got Peer Gynt, Ghosts, where are we at here? A Doll's House. Was there another one? Let me know. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But I think we've got 6 or 7 plays in total, which we're going to make our way through from Henrik Ibsen. And in the final installment of essays on novels, there is an essay about As I Lay Dying. Obviously, I'm going to get around to that one. But the inscription at the very beginning of this book says, "The reader became the book, and summer night was like the conscious being of the book." The reader became the book, and the summer night was like the conscious being of the book. I think that's a great quote. That is often what I talk about when I talk about the transcendence of writing to literature. And I try to be as non-pretentious as possible, talking about one of the most pretentious things someone can talk about. Moving on, the next book I'm going to go over is the philosophical one, The Literature of Nihilism. A plain gray cover. I think that's brilliant. I think that's beautiful. This was a library book I got through Amazon. This belonged to the Indiana University Library Northwest, which I can't be positive, but I think one of my other fancy-dancy books that I've ordered through Amazon lately was from the Indiana University of Northwest, or whatever it's called, which is Enemy of the People. We did Enemy of the People here. Another play from Ibsen that we did. I don't know what it was, but I'm pretty sure I got a different book that was also from the University of Indiana, yada yada. But this is, I've talked a lot on the channel about believing myself to be a nihilist, but also believing nihilism to be oftentimes misrepresented. So I thought I better put my money where my mouth is and start reading a little bit more of the seminal texts of nihilism. This book is from this compilation, the 60s. So we're looking at a text which would have been in the waning hours of, if I have the history correctly, the waning hours of nihilism not being a caricature, which is, I believe, where we are at now. Also, one of the things that I have felt very recently on the channel, and I need to do my part to combat, is if you spend any time on YouTube in the sort of productivity tube part of things, there's a phrase, and I can't remember the book it's from, known as "sharpen your blade." And what it means is, if you have 2 guys that are cutting down trees, and one guy, they're cutting down trees with axes that are identical. Halfway through their respective lots of the forest, one stops to sharpen his axe. And he says to the other guy, "Hey, why don't you stop and sharpen your axe?" And he says, "I can't. I've got too many trees to cut down." The irony there is, sharpening your axe makes those trees so much easier to cut down. There is a principle in productivity known as sharpen your axe, and I feel sometimes that my axe is getting dull. And what I mean by that is I have not taken the time since starting Strip Cover Lit way back in December of 2015. I've not taken the time to sharpen my blade. Any of the time that I have taken with literature has been to, in essence, chop down trees, which means I have introduced myself to very few new ideas or nuances of ideas, extracurricular to those which present themselves to me directly in texts. I have not taken the time apart from speaking about literature to study more literature, to study more philosophy, to study more science. I've not really taken the time to do that. Everything I've done has been towards the ends on the channel. Not for the means, but towards the ends. And I'm feeling it. I'm feeling myself not having all that much spark. And I'm sure that has come across in videos. And I don't want that to be the case. I want to have new ideas and nuances of ideas fresh in my mind to be able to throw around. The big place I felt this was when I was doing the weekly reader. I realized how little reading I am doing extracurricular to the channel. And in as much how difficult it was for me to... I'm an ideas guy. I love ideas. I love to play with ideas. If there was someone who was willing to hire me to work in a think tank, by God, that would be the greatest profession ever for me. I am the classic creative type. I don't ruminate on things as much as I should. You could find that if you go through my thumb drive right now with all of my writing on it, I've got so many first drafts and I have so many halves of first drafts that it's embarrassing as a writer. It really is. Because I'm halfway through writing the short story and all of a sudden, there's another short story I've got to write, and I have to write it now. And I say thumb drive, here's how little time I spend on second drafts and ruminating on things. I don't have my last 6 or 7 notebooks even transcribed onto computer. Or how would you say that's not transcribed, would it be? But I don't have it typed up. If I died today, no one would be able to read my handwriting to go forth with the genius that I have born into the world, you know. But I don't do that on the channel either. I don't have a whole lot of newness. I feel don't have a lot of new. I find myself regurgitating the same ideas, which, look, if you wanted to take one thing, nihilism, for example, and run all of literature through the rung of nihilism, your work would never end. You could do that. And you could do it from pro-nihilism and con-nihilism. You could do that, and it would never get boring. But I don't feel that that is fair to do on a channel. What I'm trying to do with the channel is present the ideas that are more inherent to each text. So hopefully I can dig some of them up and be able to express those things. That's what I try to do with the read-alongs. So hopefully, you know, ironically, against the argument I just presented, reading a little bit of the seminal work towards nihilistic ends will help me back to that place, including, but not limited to, the beginning. This book has a 30-page introduction, but the part 1 is religion and the battle against nihilism. And I think for me, and the ideas that I have about nihilism and philosophy in general, that is going to be the most fruitful part of the book for me. Not because I'm religious, I'm not, but because I think the arguments waged against nihilism are countercedent. The arguments waged against nihilism are countercedent to the beginnings of the philosophy. I think that once this caricature of the philosophy of nihilism started being put at the forefront, then it became a straw man, in essence. So that's the literature of nihilism. Glicksberg I don't think this is all. Glicksberg. Who is Glicksberg? Come on, give it to me, baby. Where is it? Charles Irving Glicksberg. It's Charles I. Glicksberg, but the only reason I know it's Irving is because someone has taken the time to write Irving over the I in pencil. Interesting. That's what you get when you order used books. Interesting little tidbits like that. I never would have guessed I meant Irving. I would have thought it was a different I name. So the next one I'm going to present is a poetry book that is new to the channel. The Poetry and Prose of William Blake. It's backwards because we all know William Blake wrote backwards as he was a devil worshiper. The complete poetry and prose of William Blake. Do you see this? That's a big bad mamma jamma. I plan to go basically poem by poem through this and sort of create. If you don't know, William Blake presented his poetry on what are known as plates. So he would pair his poetry was presented not just as words, but as handwriting, paired with visual representations of what was going on in his work. I am not the most well-read on William Blake, but I do have a companion a companion text, which will be aiding me through this, probably two. I have one that is from college, The Bible and Literature. William Blake wrote exclusively religious stuff, basically. Religious iconography, religious ideas. The very first one I'm going to be presenting, which happens on page 33, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, begins with the argument. Then it goes into the voice of the devil. But what we're doing is we're looking at religious ideas and sort of continuing on the narration that is in the Bible. But I have the Bible and Literature, which I had for the Bible as Literature course in college. But also, I have a book which was a gift from a professor when I was in community college. It was my art history professor. It's an interesting story behind this, but it is what is it called? I can't find it. It's about William Blake. It's named after a Tiger in the Night. It's one of the famous lines from the Tiger. Anyway, it is a text about William Blake. I'm going to be presenting all of these things. I'm going to be, you're not going to see my pretty face in most of those videos. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the representation of the poems as they were presented on the screen as I am talking behind those images. That is what I plan to do for approximately 30,000 billion poems as they were presented by Blake. William Blake, if you are not heavily into poetry, William Blake is a poet that is, what you need to do is you need to just Google William Blake and read the popular ones, because the popular ones, the Tiger, the Lamb, things like that, these are ones that are challenging poems, but more challenging the deeper you get. So they're poems which are able to present ideas and interpretations on a very surface level reading, or not suggesting that you are a surface level reader, but if you are not into poetry, I have one more book I forgot about. They're poems that you can do work on without having to do too much work. But the more work you do, the more you unravel there. Sort of like Shakespeare, but Shakespeare's sonnets are so difficult in immediacy, that I think you have to have a little bit more work with poetry before you really get into the sonnets. Moving on, I've got three novels. To present here. So what order do I want to do these in? I will start with the first one that is going to make an appearance on the channel next week or the week after. I can't remember. I need to do some work to figure out what I'm doing this month. If you don't know yet, 20 minutes into this video, I guess I should get this out there. I'm doing a video every day of the month here on Strip Cover Lit, but also every day of the month on my personal channel in order to celebrate the fact that I am old and decrepit and 35 years old this year. September being my month of birth. I don't have so 60 videos in 30 days. I don't have an exact order for some of these, but I think on Saturdays I'm going to start uploading a 13-part series, 12-part read-along, 1-part review for Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry. This is a book that I had not even heard about until recently. Geoffrey Furman, a former British consul, has come to Quanahuac, Mexico. His debilitating malaise is drinking, an activity that has overshadowed his life. On the most fateful day of the consul's life, the Day of the Dead, 1938, his wife, Yvonne, arrived to Quanahuac, inspired by a vision of life together away from Mexico and the circumstances that have driven their relationship to the brink of collapse. So that is the initial part of the blurb on the back. I've started it. I've gotten only a few pages in. It reminds me almost at the beginning as if Ernest Hemingway wrote The Shining, which is weird. It reminds me at the beginning as if Ernest Hemingway wrote The Shining. So we're going to get into that a little bit chapter by chapter here on the channel soon. So yeah, make sure you order that if you were looking forward to reading along with me. Malcolm Lowry is someone whom I have never heard of either. 1909 to 1957, was born in England, and he attended Cambridge University, so we're off to a bad start. He spent much of his life traveling and lived in Paris, New York, Mexico, Los Angeles, Canada, and Italy, among other places. He is the author of numerous works, including Ultramarine and Hear Us, O Lord, from Heaven, Thy Dwelling Place. Yeah, so it's interesting so far. I have, at this point in the first chapter, more notes to speak about than I do sentences of explanation of what happened, the so what happened part of the videos, which is a good start. The next book that we have to talk about is Bret Easton Ellis, Lunar Park. Bret Easton Ellis is one of my favorite writers, and I don't have too much experience with him. I've read American Psycho, obviously, but also Less Than Zero. I think that's the only other one I've read by him. But he has been, to my experience, extremely. I think I read one more. I swear I read one more. I don't know where it is or what it is. I think that from my experience with Bret Easton Ellis, he stands to be the preeminent novelist of our time if he would just do it. If he'd just do it. Incredibly intuitive writing. His writing is, I would describe it as inarguable. His writing is so authentic that it's inarguable. You cannot look at it and say, yeah, but. There's none of that. Everything that he does is within the graces of his characters. And that is difficult to do. And it is something that presents the characters and their situation in such an authentic light that it becomes like William Faulkner. I think William Faulkner is inarguable. Everything that he presents it's not, these are not people we would like, but we know they exist. These are not people that we would want to have as friends, but we would probably give them a hand if they needed it. These are people that, though they are faulted, though they are faulty, they carry right on in their own way, which is, so sometimes the point of literature is not the change that occurs, but the fact that none did. Bret Easton Ellis, in a very nihilistic sense, brings that around and wags it in the face of the reader. I just can't sing his praises enough. The final book in this book haul, the Brothers Karamazov, the Brothers Russian, by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is another book that will be presented on the channel. I don't know how to break it up yet. It is a book that I have heard is extremely challenging, and I am looking forward to it. Everything I've read from Fyodor Dostoevsky. So he's a lot like Bret Easton Ellis in some ways, but a whole lot different in others. Bret Easton Ellis is sort of his craft. The craft employed by Bret Easton Ellis is a lot like the craft employed by Nabokov, in that it just sinks you down into it. It's like quicksand. You have no choice once you start reading it but to keep going. You are powerless in his prose. Everything I've read about from Fyodor Dostoevsky is sort of the opposite. Now, of course, it is translated. And this is the edition translated by Richard Pevier and Larissa Volokonsky. Fucking Russians. So what am I going to say here? A lot of the writing in Fyodor Dostoevsky is translated in a sort of clunky manner. It's not the most aesthetic, if you will. But where the writers are a lot alike is in the sense of nihilism from their work, but also darkness is different than nihilism. And the darkness in their work is irreparable. The darkness in their work is irreparable in that it presents itself as unyielding. But it's sort of their writings, to my experience, is sort of the opposite of a superhero movie. Like if you just made a supervillain movie, it's going to be a whole lot darker. By necessity, it's going to be a whole lot darker. So those are the 6 books that I have for this book haul on Strip Cover Lit, and each of them I think is going to find their way onto the channel in some capacity at some time. I hope to see you tomorrow, because we're going to have another video. I don't know what it is off the top of my head right now, but also over on my personal channel, I'm going to try to pin a comment below from my personal channel. Follow me over there. Go over there and follow me. I do a lot of Ask Adrian Anything videos and movie reviews, things like that. So go over there and follow me there.